Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a loaded video because we're going to cover some significant updates. So, a lot happened yesterday, and as we enter day 3 of free agency, there's a lot going on. So, to start off, Larry Nance Jr. is heading back to Cleveland. A major loss for Atlanta's front court. It leaves a gap in the rotation. We really need a third big, so we're going to break down what that really means and who could replace him going forward. He's going to have a big gap to fill, not only in the rotation as a low end player, but as a leader in the locker room because Larry brought a great veteran presence. Then we're going to dig into a cryptic tweet from Trae Young. It's officially that season. There's a lot of rumors going on in the NBA right now. We're going to talk about them and what that cryptic tweet might mean. It's fueling some major speculation, so we're going to cover that in a little bit. And then, yes, even some rumors involving Giannis Antetokounmpo. We haven't talked about Giannis on this channel in a while because it seemed like a long shot, and it still is a long shot, but there are some other factors that are contributing to maybe this, speculation rising a little bit again. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and talk about Larry Nance Jr. So he's returning home. He's officially signing with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he obviously played several seasons ago with LeBron James. It's his hometown team, and he's returning on a veteran minimum deal, according to Mark Stein of the Stein Line. This was obviously attainable for Atlanta. This minimum deal wouldn't have affected their cap sheets, but Larry wanted to go home. The 32-year-old forward played in 32 games for the Hawks last season. He averaged 8.5 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 1.6 assists per game. He shot a career high from three, so he very much fit into the system. And I think Atlanta really did want to bring him back. However, it just after bringing in Porzingis, there wasn't a lot of play time for him, and he decided to go elsewhere. So Nance actually, as we know, he suffered an injury towards the middle of last year that kept him sidelined for the remainder of the season. It was a non-displaced fracture in his right knee. It was in early February, and like I said, he didn't return to action for the rest of the year, and that was the last time we ever saw Larry Nance suit up for the Atlanta Hawks. So it was short, but in the time that we got to see him play, it was great, and we will always appreciate Larry's contributions to the Atlanta Hawks, and really in a transformative year. So I mean, like I said, he was reportedly open to coming back to Atlanta. The Hawks absolutely had the financial flexibility to, return the same offer as Cleveland and obviously offer more. But this ultimately came down to opportunity and location. Nance gets to return home and compete for a title in Cleveland. And with the Hawks adding Kristaps Porzingis in that trade and already having Onyeka Okongwu, there really wasn't any spot in the rotation for him. He obviously would be locked into that third big position. However, that's not something Larry would necessarily want to do. And so obviously he signed with Cleveland. His path to minutes in Atlanta would have been limited. So, I mean, this leaves Atlanta with a pretty clear need. A third big man. I mean, teams always have third big men. They're not usually very, great players, very reliable ones. But with Nance gone and, the team obviously declining the option on Dominic Barlow, the young forward / center, the Hawks are looking a little thinner in the front court than you'd really like behind KP and OO, especially KP, who's very injury prone. So hopefully they get that covered. But we're going to talk about some options for that third center spot because there are some very good names left. Guys that really could contribute and contributed a lot last year, but could be in a position to where if KP or OO goes down, they could slide in as that backup big or even start on occasion. So who makes sense as a third center option? There are a few still, some solid names left on the free agent market. So, and I believe we did cover some of these yesterday, but we're narrowing it down specifically to the center position and who Atlanta could bring in. So a few of the solid names that are still around. Thomas Bryant. This is probably my favorite third center target, just because obviously he probably would just demand the minimum. He's not someone who would have to play a lot, but I mean, he recently developed the three ball. He was a big piece towards Indiana's finals run. He ended up not playing a lot in the actual NBA finals, but in the games prior in previous series, he was stepping outside and knocking down threes and still being a reliable interior presence. So I mean, he's a solid scorer off the bench, and he really would provide Atlanta with what they need for a third big. Another guy that's interesting is Jackson Hayes. So Jackson Hayes actually played as the starting center in LA last season, and while He definitely struggled towards the end of the season, and him not being able to be in the rotation kind of ended LA's season against the Minnesota Timberwolves, where they lost in five. He's still young and athletic, with some potential. He's an inconsistent player, but as a third big, being obviously a rim running specialist who can catch lobs and set good screens. He wouldn't have much of a huge workload here in Atlanta, because obviously he'd be catching lobs from Trae Young, and obviously he makes centers' lives a whole lot easier. Another guy who is more of a veteran presence, who I would really like as Atlanta's third big, Bismack Biyombo. So he's a veteran who's very defense first. He can block shots and rebound. He's kind of been around the league a little bit, but last season he was obviously with San Antonio. He's not someone who is expected to really play at all, but he could be a good fit as the third center. So now let's talk about a potential dream option, but kind of far-fetched, because there are other teams interested in him, and Atlanta isn't going to want to tie up a lot of money to their third center, and he probably will request more than obviously like the minimum, or like 2-3 million. So he's probably out of reach. The Hawks do have some money left in the mid-level exception, and it's fair to assume this guy wouldn't want to be a third center in the rotation. But Al Horford, the former Hawk legend, obviously, if Horford is willing to come in as a veteran locker room leader and occasional contributor, I'm completely on board. I mean, Atlanta's building one of the stronger teams in the Eastern Conference, and while I'm not necessarily saying they're going to be title contenders next year, bringing in a guy like Al Horford to potentially win another ring in his final season or two could be good. A 1-year minimum would be perfect, but obviously, like I said, he is demanding more on the free agent market. I mean, he's drawn some interest from the Golden State Warriors, and they obviously would offer more than Atlanta. I don't think the Hawks would go over like $3 million for a guy who's supposed to be their third center, because obviously they still do have 3 roster spots available, and they want to use those wisely. So, I mean, how would you guys feel about Horford coming back? I would certainly love it if he's on board with the vision, but if he wants a bigger role, then absolutely not. I mean, realistically, the Hawks should prioritize a big who can step in reliably if Porzingis or Okongwu deal with injuries, which is something that is very likely. Unfortunately, we're gonna pray that doesn't happen. However, it very well could. Given their history, it's a real possibility. So we're gonna be monitoring that situation closely, and I'm going to provide every single update on my Twitter, and obviously here on Hawks Latest, and also writing articles for Soaring Down South. So now we're going to move on to what has everyone buzzing today. Trae Young is officially in cryptic tweet season. Last season, he obviously did this a little bit, and he really has his whole career when rumors start to, kind of break into offseason. There's a lot of rumors going on right now, and Trae Young tweeted a simple hourglass emoji. That's it. So there's a lot of rumors going on right now. If you follow Trae, like I said, over the years, he doesn't just post these randomly. He's done this multiple times right before, a certain move has happened. I mean, players do this all the time, whether it's a trade or a signing or even, contract decisions. There's a lot at stake, and Trae could be hinting towards something bigger. This timing matters. So on Sunday, Trae Young actually becomes eligible to sign his contract extension. We've seen various reports on maybe the Hawks stick it out with Trae and don't sign his extension this offseason, let him, potentially opt out or just play one more season before deciding on that. There's a lot of different, reports. And with the Hawks' recent moves, though, acquiring Porzingis, bringing in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, everything points towards Atlanta going all in. So with Trae actively recruiting these guys and showing commitment to the team and city, I expect him to sign an extension. So that could be what this tweet is about. Trae Young could just be hinting that in a few days he's going to, obviously on Sunday, sign his extension with the team and be locked in Atlanta for the next 4 or so years. That would be a dream scenario. But maybe this tweet means something bigger is brewing. Maybe, just maybe. But let me preface this. What I'm about to say is very speculative. This is not a report. It's some analysis based on recent events going around in the NBA. But the idea of Giannis Antetokounmpo in Atlanta is a little less unrealistic than it was a few weeks ago. And here's why. So the Hawks now have flexibility, some real flexibility. They've made a flurry of offseason moves, restructuring their roster without gutting their depth, really being able to have a lot of assets, whether you want to develop them or, package them in a trade to further compete for a title as early as this season. Recently, they acquired a Milwaukee pick swap. Obviously, the one that they acquired in the draft day trade. It's a swap with either New Orleans or Milwaukee, whichever team is worse. Atlanta gets their pick, so Atlanta does have control over the 2026 first round pick from Milwaukee, and they also have a little bit of control over Milwaukee's 2027 first round pick. So the next 2 seasons could, Milwaukee could just be a bad team and really just benefiting Atlanta specifically. Let's say they're eyeing Giannis. Getting these picks is a very strategic move, and they're probably the most valuable assets any team has if they were to make an offer for Giannis Antetokounmpo. So another interesting aspect is that DraftKings Sportsbook, a pretty reliable gambling site, gave the Hawks plus 600 odds to land Giannis Antetokounmpo if he were to ask out. Now, obviously, we right now don't think Giannis is going to ask out. There's still a possibility, but what's notable about these plus 600 odds is that it's the best of any team. The Hawks have the highest odds to land Giannis Antetokounmpo this offseason, and I'm not kidding. That is an actual report, but it was a very sudden shift. And a lot of times when there's sudden shifts on the market, teams usually have at least have whispers of something going on around that. So Atlanta wasn't seen as a top suitor just a few weeks ago, but now all of a sudden they skyrocket to number one, and it's not even close. Something's brewing there. I'm not saying they're trading for Giannis, but something is brewing there with Atlanta's assets, and then obviously the betting odds shifting. So let's also talk about what's going on in Milwaukee here. The Bucks actually just yesterday threw a massive bag at Miles Turner, even waiving Damian Lillard in the process, the several-time All-Star and one of the best point guards of the generation. So according to Chris Haynes, who has very close personal ties to both Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak was upset with the move. This is not something that he really signed off on. He obviously likes Miles Turner and would be excited to play with Turner, but the way they handled the situation of waiving Damian Lillard upset Giannis. And I mean, Chris Haynes has worked closely with Damian Lillard for years now, and he actually he's related to Giannis's wife. I believe I saw that the other day, and I did some further research on it, and it's true. That is what it is. He's related to Giannis Antetokounmpo's wife, so obviously there's some close personal ties with them two. So I mean, the Bucks also made a series of questionable signings, very questionable. They traded for Vasilije Micic, widely regarded as one of the worst players in the NBA. They signed Gary Harris. All of this feels kind of disjointed, and at the expense of long-term vision, it's not really looking very bright for Milwaukee. I mean, if Giannis asks out, and again, the Hawks are, quietly one of the best positioned teams to make an offer without blowing up their roster. I mean, they have several assets. They have picks. They have lots of picks. They have young talent. They have some win-now players. They have, obviously, Trae Young, who is Giannis has reportedly respected and admired from afar. I mean, Trae would make Giannis's life easier. Giannis would make Trae's life easier. It's something just great to think about, and it's something that it's not, I'm not saying it's a realistic possibility, but it's more realistic than it ever has been. So, I mean, like I said, we haven't talked about Giannis in a while because, frankly, it didn't seem like something that could ever happen. But as things evolve, don't be surprised if Atlanta is suddenly in the mix if Giannis ever gets fed up in Milwaukee. And that could happen really soon with some of the weird moves that they've been making recently. So the hourglass emoji from Trae Young might just be a nod to something coming, whether that's his extension or maybe something far more dramatic like a deal for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Not to feed into everyone's delusions, but there's some real smoke there. And when there's smoke, there's fire. So to recap, Larry Nance Jr. is heading back to Cleveland, a big loss for Atlanta's front court, and the Hawks need to find a replacement third big. A few intriguing names are left on the market, such as Thomas Bryant, Jackson Hayes, or Bismack Biyombo. Meanwhile, Trae Young might have just hinted at some big news coming, whether that's his extension that he's eligible for on Sunday or a move we are not even expecting. The next few weeks should be absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to be covering it all here on Hawks Latest, on my Twitter account at LangleyATL, and on Soaring Down South, writing articles. So make sure you turn on notifications, hit that like button, and subscribe. I'm going to have the updates to you guys as soon as anything happens the rest of the offseason. So let me know in the comments who you want the Hawks to sign as their third center, because they are going to be in the market. They are going to bring in another big. And what do you think Trae's tweet really means? Let me know. Let's speculate. So once again, thank you guys for watching. I'm Zach Langley, aka LangleyATL, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.